Darren was used to being overlooked. On Nexus Station, a sprawling intergalactic hub where dozens of alien species mingled with humans, he was just another maintenance worker. His days were filled with fixing busted conduits, recalibrating environmental systems, and dodging blame for problems that weren't his fault. He didn't mind. The station was a marvel, and he was proud to be part of something bigger than himself. But 3 weeks ago, everything changed. The reactor meltdown should have been a disaster. A cascading failure in the core almost triggered an explosion that would have obliterated the station and everyone on it. Yet, thanks to Darren's quick thinking and some creative rerouting of power through auxiliary systems, he saved the day. Of course, no one noticed at first. The higher-ups assumed it was the emergency protocols kicking in, not some low-level human tech sprinting through maintenance tunnels, risking his life to manually override the failsafes. It wasn't until the station's AI reviewed the logs that Darren's name came up. Suddenly, he wasn't just that guy who fixed the leaky pipes. He was a hero. Now, standing in the central plaza of Nexus Station, Darren adjusted the collar of his plain, gray jumpsuit and tried not to sweat. He hated being the center of attention, but the entire plaza was packed with spectators, humans, aliens, and a few species he couldn't even name. Towering holograms projected his face to every corner of the station. The announcer's voice boomed overhead. For extraordinary bravery and ingenuity, we present the Alliance Honor Medal to Darren Kovac. The crowd erupted in cheers. Darren shuffled forward, his cheeks burning as a shimmering alien stepped onto the stage to meet him. She was an ambassador from the Sathri Consortium, a coalition of alien species known for their elaborate traditions. Ambassador Rin, with her glistening teal skin and sweeping silver robes, looked down at him with an expression that was both regal and kind. Her voice was melodic, carrying the weight of ceremony. "Human Darren," she said, "your actions have brought great honor not only to your people but to the Alliance itself. Such bravery deserves not only recognition, but a token of our gratitude." Darren blinked. Gratitude. He'd heard rumors about this part. Every Alliance Honor Medal recipient was given a ceremonial gift, usually something small but exotic, a rare artifact, a trinket, or, in some cases, a pet. He couldn't help but feel a flicker of excitement. He'd always wanted a companion, maybe some kind of alien creature. Something small and furry like the Krillian snowhoppers he'd seen on the station's infoboards. Ambassador Rin gestured to a group of attendants standing just off stage. They moved aside, revealing a tall, slender figure cloaked in shimmering white fabric. The figure stepped forward, removing the hood to reveal a face that took Darren's breath away. She wasn't a pet. She was a person. A woman, but not human. Her skin was a soft, iridescent hue that shifted between lavender and silver in the light. Her hair fell in cascading waves, glowing faintly like threads of starlight. Her eyes, large and luminous, fixed on Darren with an intensity that made his stomach twist. "This," Rin announced, "is Kiara, an Illisan. She has volunteered to serve as your companion and honor you with her presence." Darren's mouth opened, then closed again. He had no idea what to say. Kiara stepped closer, her movements graceful and deliberate. When she spoke, her voice was soft but clear, carrying an almost musical quality. "I am honored to be chosen for this role. I will dedicate myself to your well-being and serve as a symbol of our alliance." Darren's brain short-circuited. Serve? What was that supposed to mean? He glanced at Rin, hoping for clarification, but the ambassador simply smiled as if this arrangement were perfectly normal. The crowd cheered again, clearly thrilled by the spectacle. Darren, on the other hand, felt like he was about to faint. Back in his cramped living quarters, Darren sat on the edge of his bunk, staring at Kiara, who stood across the room, her posture impossibly elegant despite the low ceiling. She hadn't said much since they'd left the ceremony, and neither had he. What was he supposed to say? "Look," he began awkwardly, running a hand through his short brown hair. "This is a lot. I didn't ask for a companion. I thought I was getting, like, a pet or something. Kira tilted her head slightly, her glowing hair catching the light. A pet? Yeah, you know, something simple. Low maintenance. Doesn't talk. He immediately winced. Not that you're… I mean… Kira's lips curved into a faint smile, the first sign of amusement he'd seen from her. I assure you, I am quite capable of looking after myself. Right. Darren nodded, still feeling completely out of his depth. So, do you have, like, a manual or something? Instructions? What am I supposed to do with… for you? Kiara stepped closer, her gaze steady. You need do nothing. I am here to honor you. That is my purpose. Darren groaned, leaning back against the wall. This was going to be a long day. Darren sat at the small table in his quarters, staring down at the half-eaten sandwich in front of him. The bread was dry, the filling bland. The food didn't seem to matter much anymore. His mind was still reeling from the sudden turn his life had taken. He'd saved the station from a meltdown, earned a medal, and, instead of getting a pet like he expected, he was now sharing his quarters with an alien woman who was… well, she wasn't a pet at all. Kira, the Elysian woman, had been quiet most of the morning, watching him with those glowing eyes, as if she were waiting for him to say something important. She wasn't human. She wasn't anything like the creatures he'd seen in the holo ads. Yet she was here, and it seemed like his life had just become very complicated. He finally put the sandwich down, his appetite gone. So, he began, what exactly are you supposed to do? I mean, what does it mean to honor me? This whole thing is strange. Kira looked up from the corner of the room where she had been standing. She had a serene, calm presence, as if nothing in the world could shake her. I am here to serve you, she said, her voice still soft, yet carrying an air of confidence. That is the Elysian way. To honor someone is to dedicate your existence to them, to ensure their happiness and well-being. Darren blinked. Serve me? You mean like a servant? Kira's gaze never wavered. Not exactly. The Elysians believe that honoring someone is a sacred duty. We give our loyalty, our attention, and our respect. It is not servitude in the human sense. It is a bond between us. Darren frowned, trying to process her words. The idea of someone being so devoted to him felt completely foreign. But I don't need a servant. I'm just a guy. I don't even know what to do with this. He gestured between them, his hands waving in the air. You're not even human. How do I even talk to you? We come from completely different worlds. Kira's expression softened, but she didn't seem offended. I am not offended, Darren. I understand that this is new to you, but you will find that my presence is not as strange as it appears. I can learn your ways, just as you can learn mine. Our bond will help us understand each other. Her words made Darren pause. Maybe she was right. He couldn't expect her to know everything about Earth culture, just as he knew almost nothing about Elysians. Still, there was something about her calmness that unsettled him. She was too perfect, too calm. So, what do you want from me? Darren asked, his voice a bit too sharp. I mean, what happens next? Are you just going to hang out here and look at me all day? Kiara tilted her head, considering him carefully. I do not wish to make you uncomfortable, Darren. I am here to observe, to assist when needed, and to be with you in whatever way you find most beneficial. Darren stared at her for a long moment, not sure if he should laugh or be angry. This was so far beyond anything he had ever imagined. He was a tech guy, used to dealing with wires and tools. Not this. He shifted in his chair, uncomfortable with the way the conversation was going. Okay, well, I guess we should figure out a schedule or something. You know, like, what do I do? What do you do? Kira's eyes brightened. I do not need a schedule. My time is yours to direct. That was exactly the problem. Darren didn't want someone hanging around waiting for his orders. He wasn't a leader, and he certainly didn't want to be responsible for someone else's happiness or well-being. He wasn't ready for this. He wasn't even sure how to be around her, much less form any kind of meaningful bond. "I didn't ask for this," he muttered, rubbing his temples. "I thought I'd get a pet, like a small creature or something. Something easy." Kara's voice was gentle when she responded. "I am not a pet, Darren. I am your companion. It is not my role to be small or easy. I am here to stand by you." Her words hit him hard. He looked up at her, surprised by the way she said it. There was no hint of resentment, no bitterness. It was as if she truly believed this was what she was meant to do. Darren let out a long breath and looked around the room, unsure of what to do next. The silence stretched between them, thick and heavy. Finally, he spoke. "Okay, if you're really going to be here then, we need some ground rules. First of all, I make the decisions around here. Got it? I don't need you to wait on me. And I definitely don't need you to, worship me or anything weird like that." Kiara's expression remained unchanged, but there was a flicker of understanding in her eyes. "Understood," she said simply. Darren wasn't sure what to think. This whole situation was so strange. He had no idea if he'd made the right choice in trying to get through to her, but he figured it was better than letting things get out of hand. He wasn't ready to have an alien woman living with him, much less one who was meant to be his companion for life. But he had no choice. This was his life now, and somehow they had to figure out how to make it work. Days passed, and Darren's life became an odd mixture of confusion, irritation, and reluctant acceptance. He wasn't sure if he could get used to having Kiara around. She was always there, quietly observing, occasionally speaking in her soft voice about something she thought might help him, whether it was fixing a piece of equipment or suggesting a more efficient way to organize his tools. She was helpful in a way that felt both comforting and unsettling. She never asked for anything in return, never demanded anything from him. But the more Darren tried to push the weirdness out of his head, the more he started to notice strange things happening around Nexus Station. It started with little things: power fluctuations in the lower levels, security systems glitching at odd times, and strange transmissions that were scrambled before anyone could trace them. The station's eye was constantly on edge, running diagnostics, and the higher-ups began to get concerned. But it was the third incident, a massive data breach, that really set Darren's alarm bells ringing. Darren had been working late in one of the station's sublevels when a loud alarm blared through the hall. He cursed under his breath and ran toward the control room. When he arrived, the station's chief security officer, Commander Lark, was already there, barking orders at several technicians. "Darren," Lark snapped, spotting him. "Get over here. We need all hands on deck. We've got a major breach, some kind of signal scrambling our systems. No one can trace the source." Darren immediately got to work, his fingers flying over the control panel as he scanned through data logs and security feeds. He knew the systems well. He'd helped build some of them. But there was something off about this attack. The patterns weren't random. It was almost as if someone, or something, was purposefully redirecting the security systems, keeping them busy, pulling all their attention to the wrong places. "There," Darren muttered, pointing to a distorted transmission coming from one of the long-range communication arrays. "That's where it's coming from. But I can't get a lock on the signal. It's being bounced off too many relays." Lark cursed. "Damn it. Someone's messing with us. Get a team on it, Darren. We need to find out who's behind this." Darren nodded, but as he started to work on tracking the signal, something caught his eye. A flash of movement near the control room door. He turned, only to find Kara standing in the doorway, her expression unreadable. "Darren," she said, her voice unusually firm. "I believe I can help." Darren's stomach sank. He hadn't told Kiara about the breach. How did she know about it? He hadn't even mentioned it aloud. Could she have overheard something from across the room? But she hadn't been in the room when the alarm went off. She couldn't have. Kiera, this isn't the time, Darren said, trying to keep his voice level. It's too dangerous, and this is a security issue. Just stay back. But Kiera stepped forward, her eyes narrowing in a way Darren had never seen before. It is no accident that you are being targeted, she said quietly, her tone oddly calm. Someone is using your station's security to cover up their tracks. I can sense the patterns they are creating. Darren blinked. What do you mean, sense? How can you? My species is sensitive to these kinds of things, Kiera explained. I can feel disturbances in the system. The way they're manipulating the data, it is deliberate. Darren stared at her, stunned. You're saying this is connected to you somehow. Kiera met his gaze without hesitation. I do not know the full truth, but I am certain the forces behind this are trying to hide something from you, something important. Darren swallowed. This was bigger than he thought. He had assumed the problems on the station were random glitches, a few isolated incidents. But now Kiera's words made him wonder if there was something more sinister at play, something that could involve her, or at least her people. Before Darren could respond, the station's main lights flickered. The alarm stopped abruptly. A chill ran down his spine. Something was happening, something he didn't fully understand. Darren, you need to listen to me, Kiera said urgently. You must trust me. There are things on this station you do not know. I fear they may be using you to get what they want. What? Who? What are you talking about? Darren's voice was rising now, his frustration taking over. Who's trying to use me? What's going on? Kiera stepped closer, her face softening as if trying to calm him. The Illicans are a peaceful people. We have never interfered in the affairs of others. But I fear the station's leadership is being manipulated. They do not see the danger that you are in. Darren clenched his fists, trying to make sense of what Kiera was saying. It sounded crazy, but he'd always trusted his instincts, and something about the way Kiera spoke rang true. He could feel it. He glanced over at Lark, who was now pacing, his face tight with worry. The commander had been acting strange ever since the breach started. Darren couldn't put his finger on it, but something about Lark's behavior felt off, almost as if he were hiding something. Kiera, Darren said, taking a deep breath, I don't know what's going on, but I need your help. If you're telling the truth, I need to know everything. Right now. Kiera nodded, her gaze never leaving his. We will uncover the truth together, Darren, but you must be prepared. The forces at play here are not what they seem. As the station hummed with tension, Darren knew that the quiet life he had once known was gone. Whatever was happening on Nexus Station, he was now caught in the middle of something far bigger than himself. And Kiera, the alien woman who had come to serve him, might just be his only ally in unraveling the mystery before it was too late. Darren stood in the control room, staring at the blinking screens as his mind raced. Everything Kiera had said kept circling in his head. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was in over his head. A part of him wanted to push it all aside, to pretend things were normal, but the evidence was too clear now. There was something going on at Nexus Station, something far deeper than a simple data breach or random glitches. Lark was still pacing, his face tense, but when Darren looked at him, there was a strange hesitation in his eyes, like the commander knew something he wasn't sharing. Darren didn't trust him anymore. Kiera stood beside him, watching the screens, her eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. She had said she could sense the disturbances in the station's systems, but Darren wasn't sure how far he could trust that claim. He didn't know what she was capable of. Darren, Lark said, breaking the silence. The data breach is escalating. We've traced it to the outer rim, but the signal keeps bouncing between relays, and now it's affecting the core systems. If we don't stop it soon, it could trigger a full shutdown. Darren felt his stomach tighten. A shutdown meant total system failure. Life support, communication, power, it would all go down, and they'd be stranded in space, vulnerable. It was bad enough that something was attacking the station from within. "We're running out of time," Darren muttered. "How do we stop this?" Lark's face hardened. "We need to find the source of the signal. But with the system scrambling, we can't get an accurate location. We've already sent teams to the outer edges, but no one's reporting back." Darren turned toward Kira. She hadn't said much, but her presence was calm, as if she wasn't worried at all. "Kiara," Darren said, his voice low, "you said there's something more going on. What do you know about all this?" Kira's glowing eyes met his. "The station's systems are being manipulated by someone, or something. It is not a random attack. There is a purpose behind it." Darren clenched his fists. "Purpose? What purpose? Who would want to destroy Nexus Station?" Kiara remained silent for a moment, her gaze shifting to the screen. "Not destroy, Darren. Control. Whoever is behind this is trying to take control of Nexus Station. The question is why." Darren swallowed. The more she spoke, the clearer it became that there was more to this than a simple security breach. The Alyssans were peaceful, not the kind of people who'd stir up trouble, but Kara's calm certainty made Darren believe she knew something crucial. He had no idea what she meant by control, but the thought of someone manipulating the station's core systems scared him. "We can't waste time guessing," Darren said, trying to focus. "We need to act now. If someone's trying to take over the station, we can't let them." Lark nodded, though his face remained grim. "I agree, but we still don't have enough information to pinpoint the source. We've tried every trick in the book. Whoever is doing this is one step ahead. I think I know how we can catch them," Kira said, her voice cutting through the conversation like a calm breeze. Darren turned to her, feeling a mixture of skepticism and hope. "How?" Kiara stepped forward, her eyes never leaving the control panel. "The signal is being bounced between the station's systems, but there is a pattern. I can sense it. It is not random, as it seems. I will need access to the core system's encryption, but I can help you trace the signal." Darren's heart skipped a beat. "Wait, you're telling me you can track the signal?" Kiara nodded. "I can feel the waves of the energy. The patterns are familiar. I've sensed them before." "Where?" Darren asked. "When?" Kira's eyes clouded for a moment, and for the first time since they'd met, she looked uncertain. "It is complicated. I do not wish to speak of it just yet, but I can help." Darren's frustration flared, but he forced himself to stay calm. "Fine. We need to know how to stop this before it's too late." He turned to Lark. "Do we have access to the core system's encryption?" Lark nodded, but there was hesitation in his eyes. "We can get you access, but it'll take time. We'll need to override several layers of security. It's risky." Darren didn't have time for risks. "Just do it. I'll work with Kara." The commander nodded and moved to another console, starting the process of unlocking the core system. Darren took a deep breath, turning his attention back to Kira. "Let's do this," Darren said. "If you know what you're doing, we might have a chance." Kira stepped closer to the control panel, her fingers brushing over the buttons with a surprising gentleness. She wasn't rushing, but her movements were precise, as if she already knew what was going to happen before it did. Darren watched as she worked, her eyes scanning the screen with a look of concentration. It was like she was in a trance, her entire focus on the task at hand. He didn't understand how she could be so calm in the middle of a crisis. But then again, he wasn't Alyssian. Maybe they handled stress differently. As Kira worked, Darren's mind raced. The more he learned about the situation, the more questions popped up. Who was behind this? Why Nexus Station? Was there more to Kira's past than she was telling him? Could she have known something about the people attacking the station that she wasn't sharing? "I've located the source," Kira said suddenly, breaking through his thoughts. Darren leaned forward, heart pounding. "Where is it?" "It is inside the station," Kira replied, her voice steady. "But it is hidden. The systems are concealing it. Hidden. How? Where? Kira's gaze was unreadable. The source is in the depths of the station, in a place where no one looks. Darren's pulse quickened. Then what are we waiting for? Let's go find it. The station's corridors felt colder as Darren and Kira made their way down to the lower levels. The hum of the station's systems was quieter here, as if the deeper parts of Nexus Station were hiding something. It wasn't just the temperature that made him uneasy. It was the weight of the situation. They were about to uncover something, and Darren wasn't sure if he was ready to face whatever it was. Kira moved with purpose, her steps confident as she led the way. She seemed to know where they were going, her eyes scanning the dimly lit walls, her focus unwavering. Darren followed her, trying to keep his mind from racing. The deeper they went, the more he felt like they were walking into something they might not be able to escape. "Kira," he said, breaking the silence, "how do you know this place is where the signal is coming from?" Kira's glowing eyes flickered briefly. "I can sense the disturbance. It is here, hidden beneath layers of encryption. The station's systems are trying to protect it." "That's not comforting," Darren muttered, glancing around nervously. Kira didn't respond, but he noticed a slight shift in her posture, as if she too was preparing for something. The deeper they went, the darker the hallways became. Most of the station's lights flickered in these sections, their glow faint and weak. It was like the lower levels had been abandoned, forgotten by the crew. They reached a large reinforced door at the end of the hall, its surface cold and metallic. Kira stopped in front of it, pressing her hand to a small panel on the side. A soft humming sound filled the air as the door slid open, revealing a room filled with old, forgotten equipment. "This is it," Kira said quietly, stepping inside. "This is where the signal is coming from." Darren followed her into the room, his footsteps echoing in the empty space. The air was thick with dust, and the old machinery in the corners looked like it hadn't been touched in years. It was strange. This place felt like it had been deliberately left to decay, as if someone had wanted it hidden away. He moved cautiously toward a terminal in the center of the room, its screen flickering with static. As he approached, Kira stood back, watching him closely. "Can you access it?" she asked. Darren hesitated. The terminal was ancient, and he wasn't sure if it would even respond to his commands. But it was their only lead, so he had no choice. He sat down in front of it and began typing, trying to break through the outdated encryption. Minutes passed, but it felt like hours. His fingers moved quickly over the keys, frustration building as the screen displayed error messages one after another. He could feel the sweat on his brow, the pressure mounting. "Come on," he muttered under his breath. "I know you can do this." Finally, with a soft peep, the screen shifted. The encryption broke, and Darren quickly started scanning through the data. His eyes widened as he saw what was hidden beneath the surface. "This is..." Darren's voice trailed off, his mind racing. "It's a map." Kira stepped forward, her eyes scanning the screen over his shoulder. "A map of the station." "No," Darren said, shaking his head. "A map of something else. This is..." He paused, trying to make sense of the coordinates. "This is leading to a hidden section of the station. There's a place below the lower levels, deeper than anything we've been to." Kira's eyes widened. "A place that has been concealed from the rest of the station." Darren nodded. "Exactly. Whoever is behind this knew how to hide it. This isn't just a malfunction. This is a deliberate cover-up." Kira stepped back, her face serious. "We must go there. It is the only way to find out the truth." Darren stood up, taking a deep breath. His mind was spinning with the implications. Someone had been hiding this secret, and they were willing to go to great lengths to keep it concealed. What was down there? And why was it so important that they would risk everything to keep it hidden? He glanced over at Kira, who seemed unusually calm, despite the danger they were about to face. He wasn't sure if he should be relieved by her confidence or worried by it. There was something about her that was different from anyone he'd ever met. Something that didn't fit with what he thought he knew about her people. "Let's go," Darren said finally, his voice steady despite the anxiety creeping in. They left the room and headed deeper into the station, following the coordinates on the map. The corridors grew narrower and more winding, like a maze designed to keep people out. The walls were covered in old, peeling symbols that looked like they hadn't been updated in decades. After what felt like hours of walking, they finally reached another heavy door, its surface even more reinforced than the last one. It looked like a vault, something meant to withstand a serious threat. Darren pressed a few buttons on the console beside the door, and it slid open with a deep metallic groan. Beyond it was a large chamber, unlike anything Darren had seen on the station before. The walls were lined with advanced technology, humming softly as if it were alive. In the center of the room was a large spherical device, its surface glowing with an eerie, pulsating light. Darren's heart raced as he stepped forward, his eyes locked on the device. He didn't know what it was, but he knew it was important, and it was the key to everything. "This is it," Darren whispered, feeling a mix of awe and fear. "Whatever is going on with Nexus Station, this is the heart of it." Kara stepped beside him, her eyes narrowing as she examined the device. "It is not just a machine," she said softly. "It is something much older. Something dangerous." Darren turned to her, his mind spinning. "What is it?" Kira didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked back at the glowing device, her face filled with something Darren couldn't quite place. Fear? Recognition? "I will tell you everything," Kira said, her voice low, "but we must act quickly. This device is a beacon, and it's calling something." Darren's breath caught in his throat as Kira spoke. "A beacon," he repeated, his voice barely a whisper. "A beacon for what?" Kira's eyes didn't leave the pulsating device in the center of the room. There was something in her gaze now, something Darren couldn't quite read, but it made him uneasy. "Something ancient," she said quietly. "Something that's been dormant for centuries, and now it's waking up." Darren's heart pounded. He could feel the weight of the words in the air, thick and heavy. He had seen many things in his life, but this was beyond anything he had ever imagined. He had always believed the universe was full of mysteries, but the kind of mystery Kira was talking about, something ancient, something that could wake up after centuries, was beyond his comprehension. He took a slow step forward, but Kira grabbed his arm, stopping him. Her grip was firm, her eyes wide with warning. "Darren, don't touch it." "Not yet." Darren froze, looking at her. "Why not?" Kira hesitated, her face pale in the dim light. "Because whatever is inside that device, it's not something you want to unleash. I can sense it. It's been hidden for a reason." Darren stood still, his pulse quickening. "What is it? What is inside the device?" Kira's gaze flickered to the glowing sphere. "I do not know exactly, but I feel its power. This device is a calling beacon. It is meant to summon something. Something far more powerful than anything we've encountered." Darren swallowed hard, trying to absorb her words. The thought of an ancient force, something with power that could rival their technology, made him feel small. The station felt colder, its walls pressing in on him. The silence around them felt deafening, as if the entire station was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. "We need to shut it down," Darren said, his voice steady despite the fear he felt rising within him. Kira shook her head. "It's too late for that. The signal has already gone out. Whatever it is, it's already coming." Darren's stomach sank. "Then what do we do?" Kira turned to him, her eyes now filled with determination. "We have to stop it before it reaches the station. We can't allow whatever is out there to arrive here. The longer we wait, the harder it will be to stop." "But how?" Darren asked. He felt helpless, trapped by the vastness of what they were dealing with. "How do we stop something we don't even understand?" Kira's expression softened, but there was still a glint of urgency in her eyes. "I don't know yet, but we need to destroy the beacon. If we can break its connection to whatever is calling it, we can prevent the worst from happening." Darren nodded, even though a part of him wasn't sure they could actually do it. He glanced at the device again, its surface still glowing, pulsating with an energy that seemed to hum through the room. It was beautiful, but also terrifying. "How do we destroy it?" he asked. "We don't even know what it's made of, or how it works." Kiara stepped closer to the device, her hand raised as if she could feel its energy. "I don't fully understand it either," she said, "but I can sense its core. There is a way to disrupt it. I just need a moment to focus." Darren wanted to help, but he didn't know how. He couldn't understand what Kiara was sensing, but he trusted her. She was the only ally he had right now, and if she believed they could stop it, he had to believe it too. He glanced around the room, looking for anything they could use to aid them. The machinery here was old, relics of a time long past, but there had to be something useful. He spotted a console in the corner of the room, covered in dust, and rushed over to it. "Maybe I can interface with this," he said, hoping the console was still functional. Kiara didn't respond. She was still focused on the beacon, her brow furrowed in concentration. Darren quickly wiped the dust off the console and began typing. It took him a few tries to get the screen to respond, but eventually it flickered to life. He scanned through the interface, his mind racing. There was a lot of data here, too much to sort through in such a short time. But he needed something, anything that could help. After a few minutes of frantic searching, he found something. "I think I can modify the power flow," he muttered, mostly to himself. "If I can reroute the energy to the beacon's core, it might overload it. It's risky, but it could work." Kiara glanced over at him, her face grim. "Do it." Darren hesitated for a moment. This was it. If he was wrong, it could make everything worse. But there was no time to second guess. He quickly began inputting the changes, rerouting the power. The console beeped, warning him that the system was unstable, but Darren ignored it. His fingers flew over the keys, and after what felt like an eternity, he hit the final command. The machine hummed loudly, and for a brief moment, everything in the room seemed to hold its breath. Then, nothing. The tension in the room grew thicker, as if they were waiting for something to happen. Darren's heart pounded in his chest. Had he failed? Suddenly, the beacon's light flared brightly, and the entire room shook. The sound of a low, rumbling growl filled the air, like something deep within the station was stirring, awakening. Darren's eyes widened. "It's not over. What did I do?" Kiara stepped forward, her face pale with fear. "You've triggered something. We need to leave now." But before they could move, the ground beneath them trembled. The walls of the room began to crack, and a deep otherworldly roar echoed through the station, shaking everything around them. Darren felt his chest tighten. What have we done? The rumble of the ground beneath Darren's feet intensified. The walls cracked, the station groaning in protest, as if it were alive and in pain. The eerie, otherworldly roar echoed through every corridor of Nexus Station, making Darren's blood run cold. He turned to Kiara, but she was already moving, her eyes wide with fear. "Kiara, what's happening?" Darren shouted, his voice barely audible over the growing noise. Kiara's face was pale, her usually calm demeanor replaced with urgency. "The beacon. It's not just calling. It's summoning something. Something powerful. And now it's too late to stop it." Darren's stomach dropped. He had hoped that rerouting the power would destroy the beacon. But instead, he had awakened whatever it had been hiding. Whatever was coming. Kiara grabbed his arm, pulling him toward the door. "We need to get out of here. If we stay, we'll be trapped." Darren followed her, panic rising in his chest. His heart raced as they sprinted down the narrow, crumbling corridors, the station shaking with every step. The roar grew louder, reverberating through the walls as if something massive was approaching. The walls of the station were starting to give way, large cracks opening up along the floors and ceiling. Sparks flew from damaged equipment as the lights flickered, the station's power grid on the verge of collapse. "We're not going to make it," Darren gasped, his breath coming in short, panicked bursts. Kira didn't answer. She was focused, her movements precise as she navigated the chaotic maze of broken machinery and debris. Darren could feel the heat from the growing energy, the station's systems failing one by one. He could hear the thudding of something massive approaching from deeper within the station, the vibrations getting stronger. It wasn't just a roar anymore. It was a presence, something alive and angry, moving toward them. "We have to reach the escape pods," Kira said, her voice cutting through his panic. "If we can get there, we can still survive." Darren nodded, though his mind was still racing. He didn't know if the escape pods would even work. The whole station was falling apart, and whatever was coming for them wasn't something he wanted to face, but it was their only chance. They ran faster, Kira leading the way. Darren's legs burned, but he couldn't stop. Behind them, the station was crumbling, pieces of debris falling from the ceiling. The sound of something large crashing through the station's halls echoed through the walls. The thing was getting closer, and with it, the oppressive feeling of dread grew. They rounded a corner, and Darren caught sight of the escape pods at the far end of the corridor. His heart leaped in his chest. "Almost there," he shouted, his voice strained. Kira nodded, but there was no joy in her face. She was still focused, her eyes scanning the path ahead. Darren could see her speed up, moving faster, urging him forward. They reached the escape pods just as the station gave another violent shake. A deafening crash sounded from the floor below, followed by a loud guttural roar that shook the walls. Whatever it was close. Too close. Darren pushed himself harder, his muscles screaming in protest, and they reached the nearest pod. Kira was already at the controls, her fingers moving quickly as she worked to open the hatch. "Come on, Darren," Kira yelled, not looking up from the console. "Hurry." Darren didn't hesitate. He jumped into the pod, sliding into the seat next to her. The hatch slammed shut behind them, and the pod's systems powered up. But just as they began to lift off, a massive bone-rattling thud shook the entire station, and the pod jolted violently. "We're not going to make it," Darren shouted, panic rising in his throat. Kira's expression tightened, her face set in determination. "Hold on," she ordered. "I can get us out of here." She slammed a button, and the pod shot forward, jerking violently as it broke free from the station's crumbling structure. For a moment, Darren thought they had made it out. But then, through the tiny window of the pod, he saw something that made his blood run cold. A massive dark shape moved in the distance, rising from the depths of Nexus Station. It was huge, so large that it dwarfed the station itself. It looked like a massive, shadowy creature, its form shifting and twisting like it was made of smoke or some kind of dark energy. And as it rose, the roar grew louder, more deafening. "Is that what we awakened?" Darren whispered, unable to look away. Kira's face was grave as she stared at the creature. Yes. It was always there, hidden. A being of pure energy, waiting for the right moment. The beacon you triggered, it called to it. Darren's heart sank. The creature wasn't just any alien life form. It was something far older, far more powerful. It wasn't just a threat to Nexus Station. It was a threat to everything. Kira's eyes flickered with an unsettling calmness. "But we've escaped for now. We have time to stop it." Darren turned to her, his mind racing. How? How do we stop something like that? Kira looked out the window, her expression unreadable. "We don't. Not yet. But now that it's awake, we know it's here. And we'll find a way to stop it, together." As they watched the creature rise further, leaving Nexus Station behind, Darren knew that their fight was only just beginning. The universe was full of unknowns, but this was something beyond anything they had ever faced before. and somehow they would have to find a way to survive it together.